our project with a safety moment for us this morning. Patrick?
Thanks. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm the CEO of our Bloomington Normal Economic Development Council, and our office is actually in Uptown Normal near the corner of Fell and College. So out my window, we were asking for a safety moment. I get to see not only students, but also professionals not use the crosswalks, dart across the traffic, which can be dangerous, especially around move-in day, when people, some of our out-of-town parents are dropping people off and heading the wrong direction. So it'd be nice if there was some clear markings in Uptown and hopefully some ways to get students and professionals as well to abide by the rules and avoid some of these accidents that we see at this corner.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third virtual public conversation sponsored by the McLean County Regional Planning Commission, the purpose of which is to discuss the Go Safe plan to improve transportation safety in McLean County. My name is Mary Cramp, and I'm the chairperson of the Planning Commission this year. The Go Safe draft plan is the culmination of many hours of volunteer work over the past year by members of several committees. Volunteers included interested citizens and representatives from nonprofit organizations, universities, small businesses, corporations, and government, and more. The goal of the Go Safe plan is to improve safety for all transportation users, not only auto users, but also bicyclists and pedestrians. Since 2005, there have been about 3,500 traffic collisions, which have resulted in more than 750 injuries and 12 deaths every year in the urbanized areas of McLean County. The seed for the Go Safe McLean County Transportation Safety Project was planted in 2017 with the approval by the Plan Commission of the Long Range Metropolitan Transportation Plan, reaching out to 2045, which is available on our website, mcplan.org. The Illinois Department of Transportation awarded a grant to the Planning Commission in late 2018 to develop a Vision Zero action plan with the goal to reduce traffic fatalities throughout McLean County and the state. Subsequently, we selected a consultant, the Heil Group, to help us develop the draft Transportation Safety Action Plan. Despite the pandemic, the kickoff for the project with various committees was in June of 2018. And tonight, we look forward to hearing your comments about this draft plan. I'd like to introduce Ray Lai next, who is the chairperson, or who is the executive director of the Plan Commission. Ray?
Thank you, Mary. Good morning, everybody. I'm Ray Lai, the executive director for the Regional Planning Commission of McLean County. And want to first welcome all of you for joining the third, actually, the community conversation public outreach meeting. And thank you for giving up part of your Wednesday morning for this very important conversation on a very important topic for the community, for everybody, which is transportation safety. And we are here to listen to your comments and input on the draft Go Safe McLean County Action Plan. And as the plan suggests, that this could be the beginning of a movement for the entire community with the goal to reduce fatalities and major injuries to zero by 2030. And we hope that you will stay involved and stay engaged in the planning process as well as the subsequent implementation steps. And if the plan is adopted by the Regional Planning Commission. The scheduled meeting is early April. I'll give more details later on. But just want to point out that this planning effort is funded in most part by a grant from IDOT, the Illinois Department of Transportation. The draft plan is the product of many citizens and individuals representing various sectors in our community, as well as experts on the subject matter. And I just want to recognize some folks in the audience on the Zoom meeting this morning. There's some Illinois IDOT Department of Transportation officials and federal highways officials here. If don't mind, can you kind of wave or turn on your screen or kind of introduce yourselves, and then everybody know who you are. If you don't mind, maybe start with federal agencies first. Federal highways, I saw that JD is here with us.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. JD Stevenson with the Federal Highway Administration. I'm the team leader for the Planning, Environment, and Right-of-Way team.
Thank you, JD. Anybody else from other federal agencies, federal highways or federal transit? Okay, and then I also see a number of officials from IDOT too. If you don't mind, please introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Scott Nyhart. I'm the Program Development Engineer in District 5 for IDOT. I deal with all the Phase 1 and Phase 2 engineering for our 7-county district.
Thank you, Scott.
Excuse me, I'm Bob Nelson. I'm the Planning Services Chief for IDOT District 5 and the Bicycle Pedestrian Coordinator.
Thank you, Bob. And Martha with IDOT.
Yes, my name is Martha Brown, and I am with the Central Bureau of Safety Programs and Engineering. I'm the Safety Design Unit Chief. So our unit works with doing RSAs with the HSIP and with the SHSP, along with all roadside safety hardware.
Thank you. Thanks, Martha. Anybody else from IDOT is here?
Yeah, Tom Caldwell, Metropolitan Planning Manager for the McLean County MPO.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else? IDOT?
I see in the chat, Ray, that Catherine Beckett Suter is also here with VSPE. She acknowledged she's having some audio issues this morning.
Okay, okay. Thank you. All right, anybody else from any state and federal agencies? You didn't get a chance to introduce yourself.
Sorry, Ray. Also, Kelly Erickson is in the chat announcing that she works with Catherine and Martha at IDOT.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much. Nice to have IDOT and federal highways folks to be with us this morning. And I recognize we also have the Regional Planning Commission members here with us too. I think Diana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Diana Howman with the Regional Planning Commission. Glad to be here, hear what's happening.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. Anybody else from the Regional Planning Commission?
Ray, it's Carl Teichman with Regional Planning as well.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Okay, and then also as you all know, our chairperson, Mary Cram, who spoke earlier, is here too. How about any of the project steering committee members or subject experts who are on the panel? I know we have a number of you here with us. Can you just introduce yourselves, please? And who you representing?
CEO of the Bloomington Normal EDC.
Thank you, Petra.
Mercy Davison, I'm the planner at the.
And Kevin Cothe, City of Bloomington Public Works Director.
Thank you, Kevin.
Carl Teichman, I'm Director of Government and Community Relations and also part of the Planning Commission.
Thanks, Carl.
Jerry Stokes, McLean County Engineer.
Thank you, Jerry.
Tim McCoy, Assistant Chief of Police, Bloomington Police Department.
Thanks, Chief. Anybody else on the committee or the subject matter expert panel? Okay. I just saw that from Connect Transit. Shelly, you want to introduce yourself?
Looks like she also is having an audio challenge.
Okay. Okay. All right. No problem. So thank you all for coming to join us along with a number of the public members who really are taking the time out for this really special event and public discussion and dialogue and conversations. Next, I'll just have Julie Heil, whom you just met just a few minutes ago. Julie Heil is the president of the Heil Group, which is the consultants that have been helping us on this effort. They have been facilitating the process, been working with the committees and different focus groups. And this is local consultant, but then they do work all over the country. And so we're just pleased to have them. And with that, I'll have Julie hand the time to you.
Thank you so much, Ray. So let me introduce other members of my team, Jonathan Seiden, who you will hear from a good bit here this morning, and Rachel Heilbrod, who is the person making notes on the flip charts that are showing on screen. Just a couple of additional housekeeping, and also from Firebrand Co-op, Melanie Shalito and Kay Kirsch have been on the team. They are responsible for the graphics and the design work that we have all come to really be enthusiastic about in the materials that you will see on screen today. You'll also see these in the report when you check it out at mcplan.org. The couple of housekeeping things. We are recording this session. We want to make them available for other members of the public who have not been able to match their availability with the meeting times and dates. So just do be aware that we are recording the session. We are also actively using the chat function, important for a group this size. And so if you are having a hard time getting in, or if you are just more inclined to use the chat, please feel free to do so. We also record, we will save the chat, and it will become a record of the meeting as well. I guess the other thing I would just say is, if you are having a hard time getting in, please use the raise hand function, which you can find if you click on your participant list. And let's see, Jonathan, where is that actually now?
The participant window, if you hover over the more option, those three dots, yep. There's a couple of different signals you can use there. Also, just writing in the chat. We're watching the chat pretty closely, and so if you want to get in, you can use that as well.
And if all else fails, click your screen on and wave. And the goal anyway is for us to absolutely hear from you. Okay, so let's get started. Rachel, can you move to the next slide? Thank you very much. We are interested in hearing from this group a kind of a quick hits of your immediate reactions when you see the words Bloomington Normal Transportation Safety. What comes up for you? What comes to mind? This conversation we are trying to keep distinct from one that we will have after you've seen some more information from the report that is about your comments and questions about the whole system. What we want here really is just surface level first reactions when you think about transportation safety in our community. So what do you have for us this morning?
So I'll jump in and go first. Someone's got to break the ice here.
Great, thanks, Tom.
I think that in the last year, we've seen just a huge boom in cycling, in cyclists, in new participation, people being rejuvenated. So the numbers and the volume is through the roof. So the participation that you're seeing on the Constitution Trail and roads that we use to connect, it's just so much more populated right now. So I think some of the issues are just being even more spotlight put on them with confusion with crossing north-south Constitution Trail. You have some roads that have the stop to the cars when people are in the intersection or near the intersection, and then others do not. And then it's caused more confusion and I think angst between cyclists and drivers on the ones where they aren't there. And then it's 4 lanes of traffic and you get like 2 cars that stop and they're honking at the cyclists to go, but we can't see if the other lanes are participating as well, and it puts more at risk. So that combined with, just crowding of the trails, like the trail's super wide until all of a sudden you start to see the numbers that we're seeing now. And then you got people walking their dogs. That's their social time. So they're trying to use 3 to 6 feet between themselves, and they're walking 4 or 5 abreast, runners, cyclists. So congestion, but I mean, I think it's all good issues that helps bring light to this is the growing cycling boom.
Excellent, thank you. Rachel is going to be sprinting to catch up here. We also have all kinds of interesting things in the chat. Students on and around campus, distracted driving, Mercy says. Mercy, are you talking about particular kinds of distractions or all? All. Lots of one-way streets. Occasional drivers speeding around 45 miles an hour through school zones. Lack of bus shelters. Kathy, do you have any particular locations or parts of town in mind when you talk about bus shelters?
Not a particular location. It just seems like the tendency is to put a single or double seat just in Bloomington Normal, as opposed to, say, on Front Street, there are actual benches, and I think maybe there's an enclosure. I would call it a bus shelter. I'd like to see more of that because I think it protects people waiting for buses better than an exposed seat or 2.
Yep. Thank you. Jaywalking on Front Street. Cyclists riding on sidewalks because streets aren't safe on busier roads. Cycling and walking, Dave says, for transportation, not just recreation. Cars that fail to stop at pedestrian crosses, especially near ISU. In some ways, though it is a rather daunting and a little bit unnerving collection of hazards that you all are speaking to, the collection of your comments would reflect a transportation system that is in transition. Lots of people out, people trying to navigate distancing during the pandemic, new types of users, different kinds of user, a bicyclist who is on his or her way to work versus a bicyclist who's enjoying a nice ride on the trail have very different levels of hazard awareness, and their behaviors can be quite different as well. And I'm definitely noticing here the inconsistency of practice. So it's tough to know what people are going to do depending on the intersection and the time of day and the people who are involved. Anything else on this from the group at this point?
Julie, another theme I would just identify or add here was that Tom was speaking to the sort of standoff nature between bikes and cars at an intersection sometimes. And then Melissa in the chat used the comment about trusting cars to stop or slow down. And so I think that sort of multimodal empathy question that we've talked about through this project is coming up in this brainstorm as well.
Yeah, I agree, Jonathan. I think that's Melissa was chiming in on the same point. And I think it was last year, the year before when those were first added, one of the police departments put out some social media posts about it to create like an education or awareness. But I mean, it's still, I like to call it like a awkward first date every time you get to that intersection trying to guess what the other person's thinking. And it's scary. And I'm considering myself an experienced cyclist. So all the new people that are new to cycling, I think it has to be really intimidating, and if not worse than that, when you're talking about real bad scares that could possibly happen, if not worse.
Yeah, I'm really appreciating this question of mindset. So again, the difference between a person who gets in their vehicle to get or on whatever mode to get to the place they are going with a kind of a tunnel vision, as opposed to a person who understands they are part of a system of all kinds of users, so that it is a communal action anytime we are moving through the community.
I really like the tactic that Dave Simmons just put in the chat here, in that point of empathy across modes to describe cyclists and motorists rather than bikes and cars. It's not necessarily about the mode, but the person operating the mode. I really appreciate that, Dave. That's new to me, which I will try to. I'm sure I'll say bikes and cars 10 times today, but I will try to make that transition.
It takes a little while, but eventually becomes second nature.
Thank you for passing it along.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, and Mercy adding to the point, not just on a bike, but a mom, a wife, a friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wonderful. I also think the kind of hazard awareness that bicyclists bring, think about what the impact on your driving would be if you had that kind of hazard awareness when you are behind the wheel. If you felt that vulnerable. In our practice, Heil Group has met many people who have been the source of harm to other people. We work in the industrial space. And I will tell you, if you haven't had the experience yourself, that is a life-changing situation if you harm someone. Okay, Jonathan, let's get into the information here.
Yeah, thank you everyone for sort of priming us there. I'm going to do as I said before, a really quick, or maybe I didn't say it before actually, but I'm going to do a really quick run through of some of the elements that we've got in this action plan report. You guys are already touching on a lot of the topics that we have addressed in the report and that I will address in this overview. So I think this is a really good setup for some more comments and questions that we'll get after I do this overview. Well, that will really be the bulk of the time after I run through this in maybe about 10 minutes. There's a lot of content in the report. These slides are going to include excerpts from the report here, and I will sort of describe some of the approach, but I'm going to move fairly quickly through this review. And so I'll say at the outset here, and I'll probably say 2 or 3 more times, that I really do encourage you to go to mcplan.org/gosafe, mcplan.org/gosafe. And you can download the report there, your very own PDF copy that you can mark up and read and print and spend as much time with as you'd like. We'd encourage you to do that. We will talk about some of the details here. If you want to ask questions during the comments section, we can definitely get into some details, but a lot of content here. And I know I'm going to be going quickly. And so I really do want to reiterate that this should not stand in place of your review of the report. I really do encourage you to do it. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Some interesting takes on all of these visuals as well in the report. So it's a great document. A lot of people put time into it. I encourage you to actually go ahead and spend the time that it deserves. What we're going to do here is a quick overview of some of the data that we looked at in the report, some of the principles and priorities that guided our drafting of the strategy and recommendations, and then a quick overview of that strategy and recommendations before we get into questions. And so, Rach, if you can flip over to the next slide, where we really started was with this ambitious goal of 0 fatalities or life-changing injuries in our community on our transportation system by 2030. This is a fairly common goal that municipalities around the country and really around the world are starting to target. And so this was an ambitious goal that we adopted here to create a North Star for this project. To really keep it human-centered, to Dave's point, to really make sure that this is about protecting people from these most severe crashes. With that goal in mind of 0 fatalities and life-changing injuries, we really did dive into the data to understand what is the context that we're coming to that challenge with. How many crashes and fatalities and injuries do we have now, and have we had over time, and where are they occurring? We had lots of questions. And so we jumped into the data to see what we could find at the start. And so here's an overview of some of the charts that we've got in the report. Again, this will be too fast to really absorb all of it. I encourage you to look at these charts in more depth in the report. But we started with really this big data set of all of these crashes from 2005 to 2018 that has been collected and maintained by the Regional Planning Commission. And you could see some on this top chart how that number has sort of come down a bit since 2005. It's reduced, but 2005 to 2018 was a 24% decline in the number of crashes. And we still sit at the numbers that Mary shared earlier, which is on average in this time period, 3,500 crashes, resulting in 750 injuries and 12 fatalities on average in this period between 2005. And you can see that information on the top chart there. The bottom table compares some of those numbers and the time between 2005 and 2018 for McLean County to some of our peer counties nearby, Peoria, Sangamon County, and Champaign County, as well as the state of Illinois as a whole, which has actually experienced a dead-on same 24% decline in crashes statewide in the same period, as well as some numbers for the United States to kind of contextualize the experience that we've had in McLean County over these last 13 years or so. That highlighted stat right there became a really important one early on in the project. 94% of pedestrian and cyclist collisions resulted in injury, including 19% fatal or incapacitating injury. And so thinking about this goal of 0 fatalities or life-changing injuries, there's 3,500 crashes out there each year, but those pedestrian and cyclist collisions are the ones that are really severe and really are most likely to result in some of these life-changing injuries and fatalities that we're trying to prevent. A little bit more information about that on the next slide. You can see a sort of comparable 2005 to 2018 chart for just the pedestrian and cyclist crashes. And you can see an illustration of that point I'm making, where that light blue bar for crashes and the dark blue bar for injuries are very close to each other, because a large majority of those crashes are also resulting in an injury for a pedestrian or a cyclist who's involved in one of these crashes. You can see, you can just barely see on those light green numbers on the bottom that every year between 2005 and 2018, a cyclist or a pedestrian, or a little higher up on the chart, Rachel, every year between 2005 and 2018, there was at least one fatality to a pedestrian or a cyclist in our community as a result of one of these crashes. There were 4 in 2014, looks like the high number there, but every year in that period, there was at least one member of our community who was walking or biking and was involved in one of these crashes and unfortunately lost their life. We look at these known threats and vulnerable populations, which were, again, themes that came out of our review of the data and some of our discussion. We've already talked about some of these during the brainstorm this morning. Distracted driving, other kinds of impaired driving didn't come out this morning, but definitely an important issue. Veterans Parkway, another one that didn't really come out this morning, but I'm sure we will talk about. Multiple modes at intersections, that is something we've already talked about this morning. Unclear markings as well. And then our vulnerable populations that we really need to pay attention to in order to have an equitable approach here. The elderly, children, recent arrivals, or people for whom English is not their first language, people of color, or other people who live in historically disinvested communities, we know bear the brunt of some of these systemic issues more so than others. Visitors to our community, and pretty much anyone crossing Veterans Parkway on foot or on a bike are some of our most vulnerable populations when we're thinking about reducing fatalities and life-changing injuries from our road system. Next slide, Rach.
Can I just jump in there quickly, Jonathan? And Rachel, if you would go back to that prior slide, this is the "we have a problem" slide, right? So I think one of the really important things for GoSafe McLean County is for us to understand that collectively we harm people every year in this community, and it is not necessary. Thanks, John.
Yeah, and thank you, Conan, who I see put in the chat. Persons with disabilities is definitely another vulnerable population that we can add to this list. We had someone in our community conversation last night who spoke to her experience with a 5-year-old son who's hard of hearing and some of the special challenges that come out of keeping him safe out on the streets. Audible traffic signals with second countdown is an example, Conan, of something that we can include as part of this project overall as a way to target specifically some of those vulnerable populations. So thank you, and we'll look forward to talking more about that in the later segment here. Thank you, Rachel, for adding that in.
Great.
One of our next questions about what sort of our context here is where are these incidents happening and when are these incidents happening? So you can see on the top here our high incidence location map that has those collisions since 2005 overlaid onto a map of our community. And you can see what I think a lot of people may be intuit, which is that Main Street down the center of our community and Veterans Parkway along the east side of our community are the highest crash incidence locations that we have in McLean County, high traffic locations, all of the students that we talked about and pedestrians that we talked about in the earlier segment. Some consistently high incidence intersections you can see on this map: Veterans and Route 9, Veterans and Fort Jesse, Main Street down by downtown Bloomington, as well as all the way up through where the ISU campus is. And we'll get back to those street segments later today, I'm sure. And then in addition to the locations, we also looked at when these crashes are occurring. And you can see on the heat map below, you've got the times of day along the top and the days of the week along the side. And that yellow box identifies that 20% of these crashes since 2005 have occurred between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. So those are going to be heavy rush hour. That's going to be rush hour where there's going to be a lot of traffic on those main street segments of Veterans and Main Street, as well as likely people who are commuting to and from work on bikes and on foot. This is also going to be a dusk time of day for a large portion of the year, which also we know is a high risk time of day to be driving or walking on the streets. You can also see that sort of the other hotspot that we've got on the chart here is between 6 and 9 a.m. In the morning on those same weekdays, which is going to be, morning rush hour, sunrise time for some part of the year, similar issues just in the earlier part of the day with a little bit less traffic. So again, sharing this data to demonstrate what are the hotspots, what are the dangerous times of day so that we can raise our awareness and lower our risk tolerance ourselves when we find ourselves on Veterans Parkway at 5 p.m. on a busy Wednesday afternoon. We can say to ourselves and know, wait a second, I'm at some of the highest risk that I'll be at from behind the seat of my car or on my bike. Let me take extra precaution right now because we know that this is one of the higher risk times a day for people in my position. And just that extra care we think can start to drive down these numbers and the awareness that comes from that. Go ahead, Rach. And then I think this is the last data chart that we have here for today. But again, I encourage you to go to the report and spend some more time with these materials. There's other information in there as well that has not been added to these slides. But these are just two more charts that demonstrate what the types of crashes are that we experience in this community, as well as the injury probability for those collisions, which I talked a little bit about already. So on the top chart, you can see that the most common kind of collision that we experience in our community are rear end collisions. About 25% or 1 in 4 of the collisions are rear end collisions. That's quite common. That rear end collisions are the most, it's quite common for other communities as well, that rear end collisions would be the most common type of collision. Mercy made the point about distracted driving earlier. Rear end collisions are pretty much assumed in the insurance world at least, to be distracted driving related at this point. So that's definitely an area to pay attention to. The second highest occurrence, or the second highest percentage of these types are turning crashes. We know that left turns in particular are quite dangerous maneuvers when you're thinking about driving and collision frequency. And so about 1 in 5 of the crashes we experienced in this community since 2005 have been turning crashes. And then again, highlighting here that the frequency for pedestrians and cyclists is a little bit lower. It's about 1 in 50, which frankly is still quite high, but those are much more likely to result in a fatality or a serious injury. Again, those are the numbers we're trying to drive down with this project. You can see on the bottom chart here that pedestrians and pedal cyclists as the top 2 categories are at 94 and 93% injury probability over the course of these, thousands of crashes if they're involved in one of these collisions, whereas rear end and turning, even though they're the most frequent, are really right about around 20% injury probability, closer to the middle bottom of this list by injury probability, which again kind of justifies a focus on pedestrian and cyclist collisions specifically, and preventing those incidents in order to prevent fatalities and life-changing injuries. And the last point on the data here is on the bottom, which is really what we're trying to do here. Increasing the number of people who are contributing to and learning from the data that we're already generating as a part of our transportation system. It welcomes and welcoming diverse representatives into the conversation will help us support a comprehensive and an equitable approach to safe transportation planning, which is really what we're trying to do here and modeling here. You know, Conan, you chiming in with your points is a perfect example of making sure we have diverse representation in these discussions of the data to tailor our strategy appropriately. So that's the data that we're looking at coming into this project. We also had a handful of priorities that were identified by the project team coming into this project, as well as some core principles that we took into the project to guide our planning. So again, these priorities are in the report. I encourage you to look at them more closely there. I'm just going to list out what these priorities are. They're quite well-rounded as a reflection of the well-rounded team that we brought together to look at this issue and how connected transportation safety really is to so many other challenges and dynamics that we have in our community. And so our priorities coming into this action plan, or that we developed as a part of this action plan, would like to maintain as we implement some of the recommendations in the plan, are equity, education, enforcement, engineering, evaluation, encouraging multimodal travel, environmental stewardship, and economic impact. So borrowing best practices from other communities, thinking about the context-specific conditions that we have here in our community. These were some of the priorities that this project team thinks we should be putting at the forefront of our safe transportation efforts. In addition to these priorities, there were a handful of core principles that come from some other successful efforts to reduce traffic fatalities and life-changing injuries that are sort of the underlying assumptions of this project that we also wanted to include in the project and share with our community so that we can sort of be be aligned around some of these ideas. Rachel, if you can zoom in a little bit, I'll go through these quickly as well. The baseline assumptions that the Go Safe plan really brings to the conversation is that traffic deaths are preventable and unacceptable in our community. These are not accidents. These are multi-causal crashes that with the right information, with the right collaboration and team, we can dissect that multi-causation and we can interrupt those crashes and prevent them. They're not just accidents that are completely out of our control. Human life is our highest priority. We are coming into this with a human-centered approach, to your point, Dave, about trying to reduce those fatalities and life-changing injuries. And when you do it the right way, it doesn't have to be expensive. It's something that should be taking priority over convenience, and it's something that should be universal. The system should be safe for all users, as Mary said in her opening comments. Human error is inevitable and predictable, and we should be designing our system to accommodate and to predict and to assume that there will be some errors, but that those errors should not result in the loss of life, because we've come into that with our eyes open and without ego about that. We want to make sure that human error is a part of the system that we've designed to be safe. That safe human behavior, education, and enforcement are all essential components of a safe system, and that people are inherently vulnerable, and that speed is a fundamental predictor of crash survival. Another comment that was made earlier in the brainstorm. Generally speaking, a lot of this report is talking about slowing down. Okay, and so then that brings us to our strategy and recommendations. This will be the last segment of my sort of speech here, and then we'll get into the comments and questions. Our 5-year Go Safe strategy and recommendations, you'll remember that our target is for 2030, so it's a 10-year target that we're coming to this action plan with. Our action plan is for the first 5 years of that 10-year period. Presumably we'll have a new plan for the following 5 years in order to reach that goal if we haven't reached it already. That strategy, as of right now, has 3 components, and you'll see here and in the report that there's no silver bullet measure that's going to guarantee our success on this project. We need to take a multi-pronged and a comprehensive approach to this challenge. And each of these components of the strategy have their strengths and weaknesses, and so bringing them together is how we will be successful. And those 3 prongs of our strategy that the project team came up with are infrastructure, data research and technology, and community culture change. So I'm going to go through some of the recommendations for each of those bits. Again, it will be the prongs of the strategy. Again, this will be quick. I encourage you to go and read more about each of these strategies in the report. The infrastructure section, really the overarching idea behind the infrastructure section is that infrastructure is extremely important for creating a safe transportation system. It defines a lot about our system. It's also quite costly. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of partners from multiple jurisdictions to do a large infrastructure project. Excuse me. And so while we need to incorporate infrastructure into our strategy, we cannot rely on infrastructure to get to our goal. The infrastructure recommendations that we have included here, we had the project team look at a whole host of street projects, some of which are underway, some of which are planned, to create a list of 12 priority street segments from the perspective of this Go Safe project that we'd like to see infrastructure projects completed on. And there's a map here of those street segments that we'll come back to in a second. The other recommendations that we've got here are targeting transit stops. To Kathy's point from earlier, a lot of the incidents that we have in our community, I think something like a third of the incidents that we experience in our community are within 100 feet of a transit stop. Some of our most vulnerable pedestrians are people who are standing on a corner waiting for a bus or trying to maneuver getting their bike hung up on the front of a bus. Lots of dangerous maneuvers that happen when people are getting on and off of public transit. So we need to focus on those transit stops. Interconnecting our walking and biking networks. We've heard a couple of comments during these conversations about you're on a bike path and then the bike path ends and it doesn't start again for another quarter of a mile or something like that. And so those places where we can make the connections and avoid those sudden sort of putting a biker off of a bike path that they were on is another opportunity to protect people with infrastructure. Taking advantage of reconstruction and resurfacing projects to implement some of this infrastructure, especially some of the lighter lift options. And then this last point is really important, which is recruiting local transportation safety stakeholders like all of you who are here in this meeting and the other meetings that we've had and others in the business community and other institutional partners to engage with all of those jurisdictions who are working on these infrastructure projects to come together and unify around these values in our community and to support those system designers and project partners to develop the kinds of infrastructure projects and move the ball on these heavy lift infrastructure projects. We need to do our part with our system designer partners as well and open up that communication to make these infrastructure projects happen. Go ahead, Rachel. So here's that map of the prioritized street segments. Again, please go ahead and there's much more information about all of these street segments in the report. There's a table with information about each of them. But on the map here, you can see again, number 1 is the segment right down the center of our community on Main Street. And number 2 is Veterans Parkway along the right-hand side. And then we are fortunate in our community. You can read the pull quote here. There's a whole section on Veterans Parkway in the report. But IDOT's 5-year improvement plan includes $170 million of investment in redesign and repair of these state-owned roads in McLean County. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that during the comment section with as many IDOT folks as we have in the room. Go ahead, Rachel. So the next segment of our strategy is data research and technology. So we are, there's a set of recommendations for each of the 3. The overarching view on data research and technology is, again, that these are essential components of our strategy. We did a little bit of a demonstration earlier about the data and the conversations that can happen around that data to advance this mission. And so this first piece is about the data, actively monitoring, publicly sharing, facilitating discussion about transportation safety data as we're trying to do today and with this report, to get more eyes on this information, to come up with some more targeted ideas and interventions to get to zero fatalities and life-changing interventions. Number 2 is supplementing the data sets we have with new sources. A lot of the data that we're looking at now, really all of the data we're looking at now is coming from police officers who are responding to these crash scenes and filling out reports. There's lots of other sources of data that we can include in our assessments and in our analysis, which we should do. Exploring other opportunities for increasing our data collection with new technologies and new processing capabilities is another opportunity that we may be able to take advantage of. And then, of course, in all of these data efforts, promoting transparency and privacy for our collection and analysis is essential for community buy-in and for this to be a sustainable process for us on the data side, is number 1. Number 2 is the research recommendations. So for any big policy project like this, we will want to be able to evaluate the policies that we're putting in place to make sure what we're doing is being effective, that the investments we're making are worthwhile. And in McLean County and in Bloomington-Normal in particular, we've got a lot of really great institutional partners and corporate partners who are really well positioned to help us conduct some of that research on the policies that we're implementing now, as well as look ahead and do research on other technologies and policies that may be coming soon so that we can stay on the cutting edge of our opportunities to reduce fatalities and life-changing injuries, as well as make sure that what we're doing is working well. So the recommendations here are to convene a consortium from some of those partners we have in our community: Rivian, State Farm, Country Financial, the medical community, universities, local government, to help us research and really actively be researching this project while we're implementing it to make sure we're going in the right directions. And then again, as I said, looking ahead to other technologies and taking advantage of some of the experts on those new technologies we have in our community at Rivian, State Farm, Country, to help us best implement these new connected and automated vehicle technologies, or vehicle to everything technologies that we know will have an immense influence on our transportation safety system. And we need to make sure we go about those things the right way when they are here. And that takes us to the third component of data research and technology, which is the technology piece. As I said, the transportation space is ripe with disruptive technology that is coming to streets really across the world and the country, whether it's connected and automated vehicles. Micro mobility devices is one of the ones we highlight in this report, whether it's e-scooters, e-bikes, pedal-powered bikes, bike share programs. These are all new technologies that are showing up all across the country. We know that we're a good community to have things like micromobility because of the universities, automated and connected vehicles because of Rivian and State Farm here, as well as our location on Route 66. And so making sure that we are ready for those technologies to arrive at our community, and we are ready to attend to the impact on the safety of our streets that those technologies will have, is an important part of this report. One of the overarching comments about the technology section is to make sure that we, and I think it's one of the recommendations here on number, I don't see where it is on here, but it's definitely in the report, to focus on public transportation as an outlet for these technologies. There is a very serious difference we learned through this project between having these advanced technologies implemented on your streets in the context of private, individually owned vehicles that are just sort of arrive in the community with automated and connected vehicle technologies that we then have to be reactive to maintain the safety of our streets given those new technologies, as opposed to being proactive and incorporating some of these technologies into our publicly funded and publicly controlled transportation system so that we can determine the narrative for how safety is impacted on our streets by these technological advances. A lot more in the report on this issue. And then the final piece, so that's big data research and technology. The final component of our strategy is the community culture change strategy and recommendations. I made the point that infrastructure can be quite costly. It can take a lot of time. There are a lot of jurisdictions that need to be involved. Data research and technology is going to have an immense impact, but it's very hard to predict what that impact will be. It's also very hard to predict the timeline that those things will start to have that impact on our community. And so this third strategy is really meant to bring the Go Safe project more directly into our community's circle of control. What are the things that we can control? What are the things that we can do to change the culture on our streets? A lot of what was discussed during the early brainstorm about yielding at crosswalks, slowing down at yellow lights, having our safety awareness generally higher in our community to make sure that we can look out for one another effectively. That's what the community culture change strategy and recommendations is oriented to. There's a lot of pieces here, especially ones that fit into that branding component of this Go Safe visuals that Firebrand helped us out with. There are a couple of demonstrative organizations on the right. I'll make the caveat here that these are really just demonstrations of the adaptability of the brand. They don't represent endorsements from these organizations, but we would like organizations like these to adopt the Go Safe brand and use it on the safety initiatives that they're either already doing or they're planning to do as a part of Go Safe, so that we can have this unified, recognizable cultural effort in our community to keep each other safe in our transportation system and to keep these conversations active throughout the year in all kinds of different cultures and subcultures within the community. So launching a campaign, maintaining the website, which we've encouraged you all to go, mcplan.org/gosafe, as well as ensuring equitable opportunities to participate in the system. And Rachel, if you can go to the next page, there's some examples of some of the other resources using this brand that we'd love to see developed in future in partnership with a variety of organizations that want to jump on the Go Safe bandwagon. flyer templates for things like bike rodeos or other events, yard signs, stickers for children, reflective stickers for children's backpacks. That top one is a car visor checklist to just do a quick walk around when you're getting in your own vehicle. So all kinds of educational materials and recognizable branded materials to develop this safe transportation culture in our community. So that wraps up sort of my overview of the data, priorities, core principles, strategies, recommendations. You can hear I'm going really fast. There's a lot of stuff in there. So I'll just finish what I'm saying again with a recommendation to go to mclean.org/gosafe to take a look at all of these materials in more depth. And we'll be interested to hear some of your questions if you've read it already or anything that I said just now caught your interest.
All right, so we are interested in hearing from the group. Comments, questions about what you have just seen? What are your thoughts about Go Safe McLean County at this point?
Well, I'm going to talk about the mindset that Julie brought up early in the discussion. And I see mindset as a very important and cost-effective way to improve safety for all transportation users, because you take personal responsibility when you change your mindset. And in order to improve transportation safety, we're talking about a lot of changes to the transportation system that can be very costly. So to me, changing mindsets is a way that we can address this in a very cost-effective way. But we have seen cities throughout the country, including Chicago, but as more and more people use bicycles and other multimodal type devices, electric scooters, we're seeing more problems with transportation safety here in Bloomington Normal. But we still have to, we're limited by dollars available. And we all know that throughout Illinois, we're struggling with economic difficulties. So to me, mindset is very important. And also I wanted to respond to Jonathan when he talked about data collection, and your slide on that listed a whole host of ways to collect data, and beyond what police officers do when they respond to an accident and complete reports. And I know that in an initial draft, it was brought up about people reporting violations or irresponsible actions that they might see. And I want to put a caution on that sort of activity, because what one person sees as a problem, another person might say, well, I'm responding to that. I behave that way because of a danger that I saw when I was on the bike trail. And I thought that that was the best way that I could quickly respond to something. And this type of reporting by individuals can also lead to fraudulent charges. Yeah, we have to be very cautious about that sort of thing.
Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
Others?
Yeah, I think there's one, going back to your screen that had the how we can change this. Education and equity are huge. But overall, before we get going on that, time. It's going to take time to change. But if we allow ourselves more time to move through our community. I've been in this community for a long time. I've also been a multimodal person. I've been a pedestrian, I've been a cyclist, I've been a motorcyclist, and I've been a motorist. And when I allow myself more time, I'm safer for myself and everybody else. Education, how do we accomplish that? It doesn't come down to dollars and cents. It can actually save money. If we partner with our insurance company or the state of Illinois, what do we have to do every year? We have to renew our vehicle stickers. So the state of Illinois has moved towards doing it online. In addition to doing it online, what about maybe a $10 or $15 price break if you go through an online presentation of things you need to remember while traveling on state roads and highways? And equity. It's getting people to buy in. This may shock you, but enforcement is probably one of the least effective ways of changing people's minds. It's similar to sticking your fingers in a river and thinking you're going to stop the flow. You're going to hit a couple people every once in a while. And if you do give an enforcement action of a ticket or something, they're going to pay the ticket and it'll be quickly forgotten. So equity and education are huge to making this accomplishment. Thank you.
Tim, I think there's also a lot to be said about peer-to-peer education, role modeling within our various communities. When you see someone who you recognize is like you, behaving in a more safe transportation manner, I think that registers, sometimes even without a conversation. You know, wow, this is a driver who actually brakes for a yellow. Or wow, this is a person who holds off near a crosswalk. How does my behavior map onto their behavior?
And going back to what Mary said, as far as being able to respond to something, that's something we drive into our officers constantly. If you can't get there safely and effectively, you do whatever situation you're responding to absolutely no good. And there have been officers here who have gotten in accidents, and there are officers here who have gotten disciplined and had traffic citations issued to them because they did not go as safely and effectively as they could.
Thanks, Tim. Others?
Looks like Bob's got his hand up.
Oh, great. Thanks, John.
I'd like to thank the Planning Commission and the HA Group for this presentation. I'm really moved by it and fascinated by it. The thing that's on my mind right now that I wanted to share is there was some wise analysis of, these kinds of changes might be more costly, whereas these would, be less cost intensive. And I was thinking about decisions that people make, like talking on their phones while driving, or even worse, texting while driving. And on the one hand, if we found a way to get people not to do that, it wouldn't necessarily cost millions of dollars. On the other hand, it occurs to me that no matter how much money you threw at that problem, some people you might not be able to get them to change their behavior. So this is an interesting quandary and a challenge for the project. So I'm really impressed by what you're doing, and I thank you for the presentation.
Thanks, Bob. Conan, your comment in the chat is really so very interesting. And I think that it speaks to our shared vulnerability within this system. So thank you for that.
So I want to jump in and say there's a lot of talk about education and training and stuff like that. And I think that is all valuable, but the problem is the people that don't care or doesn't even come across their mind, or they think it's a non-issue, or it doesn't even register what they are doing with their phone or not paying attention when they're driving. So I wonder if we would think about taking the money that we do have, or the alliances that we have with companies and universities in town, to create safe passage runways, and then we start around those. Like we notice that people say the only way to get east-west is via the Constitution Trail. So should there be another version of that further south in town so you can continue to go east-west? I mean, I think about all the expansion on the west side or the east side of town with soccer fields, baseball fields, indoor kids action parks, indoor tennis, gyms, game time, like Iron Coyote. There's so much stuff out there that people can't commute to via bike. And even with the large companies, when you talk about, wouldn't State Farm want employees to be able to commute from the east side of town over to their major facilities? I feel, as a State Farm employee, I feel I can throw them under the bus and be like, shouldn't that be someone who's willing to sponsor a highway or a veterans overpass somewhere in between Washington and Oakland? Is there sponsorship opportunities? Could a company help build that and name it, Good Neighbor, pathway or something? So I just think that we say all these things, which I think are great and they're all valuable, but if you provide actual safe runways, more than one spot, could you get people that will each actually think twice about, maybe I shouldn't try to cross here at Oakland or something like that. Maybe it is worth an extra mile or so. I mean, you're obviously not going to get everybody, but if we start to expand the ones that are 100% safe or closer to that, does that increase participation, and could it possibly lower some of the numbers in the data that we're seeing? And then another thing too is like thinking about when you add bike lanes on a road that has traffic to your left and parking to your right, that to me as a cyclist is still one of the most dangerous feelings, because now you're worried about people pulling out, opening car doors, walking in between cars to come out into the road. So it's like you've given me something, but you've added 3 more risks. So those are the things that are scary for us to think about, is like, if we're going to add, 4 bike lanes on 4 roads, is that the same price of making 1 bike lane on 1 road that has rumble strips or a mini wall or something like that? So I guess I just question, putting the money into less things to make them more safe versus spreading them out and having the participation on those things less used. So just a question, I guess.
And this is Dave from Ride, Illinois. To follow up on Tom's comment, I think one opportunity would be after this plan is finalized, to then look at any other plans that might be similar, such as a community bike plan or a complete streets policy, so that they're in alignment. Too often, a good plan is established, but then it doesn't necessarily connect with other things that are happening.
Jonathan, can you speak to this? Dave, I so appreciate that comment, and that approach definitely informed this project.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Great to
definitely
hear.
something we were thinking about coming into the project. You are speaking seemingly as a well-seasoned public meeting attendee, Dave, which we appreciate. Really a major idea behind the project, and I think you can see it in the report, is to bring things that are not typically in some of those other reports, like this community culture change aspect or the data technology, research and technology approach, and lift up those sort of complementary components of getting all of the plans around these infrastructure improvements kind of off the ground and off the shelf, so to speak. It's one of the things that we really talked about early on. And you'll see in the report, in the full report, there is reference very early in the report. In one of the first pages, it says over the last decade, and it speaks to the complete streets policies that have been passed, the reference to Vision Zero and other safe transportation projects in the long range transportation plan. I mentioned earlier that the prioritized street segments that we've got in this report are all coming, almost all of them are coming directly from these other plans that you've described. We've met in the table I was talking about before from the priority street segments, there is a column in that table that speaks to the other plans that this same street segment is referenced in. So a large purpose or one of the big motivations for this report was to add a culture change and add a sort of diverse project steering committee and a brand approach to many of these specific tactics that have been brought out in the research of these other projects. So it really was always meant to stand on the shoulders of these prior reports and really use a lot of the research that we've already done in this community, and really just kind of, again, take it off the shelf and give it some more firepower with this Go Safe project.
Other thoughts?
I think this gentleman brought up several really good ideas and issues.
Bob, do you want to speak at all to the Veterans Parkway comments that have been made? We've been hearing a little bit about overpasses and so on, and I know that you've been listening carefully during these community conversations. Bob Nelson. Bob Nelson, I don't know if you were, I think maybe I wasn't speaking clearly enough. I was wondering, yeah,
I'm sorry.
sorry. I was wondering if you wanted to comment at all on some of what you are hearing in this session about Veterans Parkway, Tom's idea about overpasses and so on, just whether you have anything for this group this morning on this area.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been a great thing for me to listen to people's concerns, because right now the projects we have going on are planned for veterans are overlays and ADA improvements at existing crossings. But what I'm learning is that as a agency, we need to think outside our right-of-way lines and try to figure out where people are coming from and what's attracting them and where's the best places to cross. Because with the number of cars that go through there, I think it's close to 25,000 a day going through there. And at the speeds they're traveling, we got to find some way to get people safely across in a direction that they're going to be going on. I know most of us are, when we're walking, we're going to take the shortest route. We don't want to go out of our way. And as what we usually do is try to get pedestrians to go to a crossing that's at an intersection, and that's not always going to work. So the comments are made about an overpass and stuff. As the bike pit coordinator, I'm like all for them, but it comes down to money and going on the way. But I'm definitely making note of these and going to be pushing them forward so that the engineers above me are going to be aware of them.
Thank you, Bob. I would just make the comment also, Mary, I'm thinking about what you said about mindset. The cross-jurisdictional nature of Go Safe McLean County, where to Bob's point, we think outside of the box of our permitted jurisdiction is, I think, a nice metaphor for us as transportation users, as movers, that I am not just engaged in the trip I am making from point A to point B, but rather I am entering a kind of transit conversation that I need to be respectful of and ready to respond to and protective of.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I think you're right. When we get into a car, we can't just think about the rules of the road. We have to be watching around, but it makes travel more dangerous as more and more people and types of vehicles get on the roadway, or using bicycles, and when they cross the street and don't use the lights, it gets very difficult for drivers and dangerous for everyone. But on the point that Bob Nelson made about people pick the shortest route, and maybe we need to look at some other things. At the intersection of Oakland and Lincoln Avenue that I use when I ride a bike to cross Veterans Parkway, one reason I use that, it's not just because it's most convenient to me. I also use it because there's a place between the north and southbound lanes to stop. In case a car is traveling faster than I anticipated, and I need to stop so that I can safely cross the other side of the road. We don't have that at Oakland Avenue. We don't have that at many other places along Veterans Parkway. And I don't believe there's anything like that built into Towanda Barnes Road at this time. I don't know how expensive it would be to build some sort of curbing or stopping place that you could use you could press a button for a crossing light for a pedestrian or for a bicyclist. Or
you're talking like a refuge island, so
yeah,
you can you break your you're crossing down to shorter segments.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I've read quite a bit about, and there's a lot of good designs out there for refuge islands. It's just something that we need to have the community to be more talking about, because I know all agencies are, when they look at something like that, they're thinking, oh, was snowplow going to hit it? You know, is it really worth it? And so the community's got to push that forward. So, but that's definitely something that it's one of those things I'm just going to keep harping on in our district that we got to do.
Well, even with those refuge islands, as you call them, I don't feel completely safe because these cars are going so fast. But I feel safer than I would be if there wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Julie, I think I just want to come back quickly to the question that Dave asked in relation to Bob's comment there about the community coming together for these conversations. I think another major function of this Go Safe report with regard to those other plans that you mentioned, Dave, that have recommendations and ideas in them that we've been accumulating. Another real purpose of this Go Safe project is to build that community coalition around those ideas and get the community conversation much more active. For this very purpose that Bob is describing, you can hear from Bob, who's coming to us from IDOT. There are a lot of other IDOT representatives here that they are looking for a unified community conversation like this one, I suppose, about what our experiences of the streets are and what the things are that we believe we need for safe transportation here. And that dialogue and that voice of our community will have a significant impact on the projects that are ultimately implemented here. And without that, Bob has told a couple of stories over the last week or so of him coming down here to Bloomington Normal and counting pedestrians and kind of crossing the street himself to get a feel of what's going on in our community. And Bob can get a feel in a weekend, but that's very different from getting together a diverse collection of stakeholders in our community with a lot of different perspectives, all saying together, these are the things that we need to keep ourselves safe. That is what will enable IDOT and the federal agencies and others to be confident in making these investments in the things that we need in our community.
Hey,
Yeah,
Jonathan. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
The more I hear from people that every day or in the weekends have to do that, make a crossing someplace or ride their bike in a certain area, and I've learned how dangerous it is. Like I said last night when I seen the students, nobody crosses in one spot. They're just all kind of spread out when they cross the street. That to me was more eye-opening on what's going on in that location than if I look at a satellite photo and say, oh, I got this over here and we got to watch for it, because you really got to get out there and see what people are doing.
Jonathan, to your comment, I would add not only letting our partners know what we need, but to the point about community culture change, what we are prepared to do differently and to accommodate or to celebrate rather than just zooming quickly to get from one point to another. Rachel, if you would move us on to the next near final slide here, I guess as soon as you finish that last point you are making. We are going to talk now in the closing minutes of this discussion about what are the actions people on this call are interested in taking in the next 6 to 12 months to help advance the Go Safe project. I would divide this discussion into two parts. Who are the key stakeholders you think we should get into the conversation? And where do you think we can go to get the word out and to gain buy-in and action?
I'll speak in general terms. This is Dave. Community organizations, different ethnicities, languages. I'm up by Chicago, so I know Bloomington Normal's a little bit different, but there will be pockets of folks. And what we've heard is that, we really make those connections with folks that maybe won't attend an online discussion, right? So there's likely those organizations that have kind of the pulse of the community, until they'll be able to speak to the folks that they serve.
Thanks, Dave.
We can certainly incorporate some of these messages into upcoming events that we have, presuming, I think we can have these events later in the fall, but we have a bike light giveaway event, and we have a children's bike rodeo. And I mean, those events are all about safety, but we could be even better about it. We could be more targeted and have some materials to send them away with. So we could also do a better job of reaching out to populations that don't always come to those events and meet people where they are. So something I'm going to think about.
I don't think we have a representative from the Illinois Secretary of State's office, but I think that they are a key player too, because when you take a driver's test, you have to study for it. And the older you get, you have to study even more. But, we have so many more bicyclists, and it doesn't take a license to get on a bicycle. But certainly safety needs to be emphasized to, all young bicycle riders. But I don't know that the Secretary of State, that's the responsibility there, but certainly as, parents should be aware through maybe these different groups, church groups or other nonprofit groups, that we could have bicycle safety experts talk to people as they begin to teach their kids to ride bikes. And, the intensity of the safety can, the level of it can increase as the children grow older.
There is a state law that says education, walk and bike education should be taught in the schools. It's not very binding at this point.
Who is speaking?
I'm sorry, this is Dave Simmons.
Thank you.
I'm with Ride Illinois. I know Kelly from McLean
Okay.
County, and so and of course, we're a statewide organization, so I was interested in this conversation.
Thank you.
So yeah, we could definitely, and Karen's there too. More can be done from an education standpoint, and that has long lasting impacts, right? So when I was in school, of course, we weren't talking bike education. Didn't have cell phones, right? So some of the messaging of change takes time is getting information to kids earlier. So yeah, education in schools, and this isn't a selfless plug, but Ride Illinois has worked with IDOT on our bike safety quiz mini grant program. So that is one opportunity for schools in Bloomington Normal to get paid to administer the free quiz. That's not going to solve all the issues by any means, but is one way to get some information to the students early, as well as high school students. And getting more information on the driver's test, working with the Secretary of State is certainly an opportunity. Yeah, so sorry, that's just kind of a brain dump, but working with IDOT and the Secretary of State and local municipalities on a focused approach on education can certainly have an impact.
Thanks, Dave. And since we don't have one of our project team members here with us today, he was here with us for our prior two sessions, Patrick Dullard, who probably many of you in the biking community know, who's president of the Friends of the Trail, and also Bike Blono. You referenced the state law, Dave, which is what brought this to mind, because Patrick has been mentioning the state law as well when he's spoken to the project that he has underway in some of these sessions. He applied under sort of the umbrella of that state law for a Safe Routes to School grant that he won and got a couple of trailers of bikes that he's planning to bring to schools once sort of COVID is less of an issue that the schools are dealing with, and is planning a comprehensive event with a bike rodeo with the Boys and Girls Club. There's a representative from the Danish Biking Federation that's coming to Urbana-Champaign that will also hopefully make a stop in Bloomington Normal. to make a presentation. And we're actively working with Patrick to leverage some of the work we've done on Go Safe to help lift up and support that event that he's got going right now to educate about bicycle safety in the schools under the umbrella of that law that you had just mentioned, Dave.
Well, and we need our media for notification to the public of these events.
Yes, absolutely, Mary. And actually another component of the Go Safe branding package that we developed as a part of this project includes letterhead for our local agencies to use for press releases that have to do with Go Safe, flyer templates, as I mentioned earlier in the overview, that can be used for all kinds of events like this. And so even in the context of attracting the media or speaking to the media about getting the word out, there are also other sort of branded Go Safe materials to create a unified presence for safety across all of those events in the media and on social media. There's also a set of Facebook assets for Facebook events that people want to put together and identify as a Go Safe event or project.
We have also been hearing about our healthcare institutions as good partners for this kind of thing. Imagine if you sat down to prepare for a doctor's appointment and one of the things you have in that packet they give you is some kind of a little flyer having to do with Go Safe. Just these pockets of quiet where people are looking for a place for their eye to land, for that to be just laced throughout our community. The other comment I would just make here, and we've been really looking at the terrific comments in the chat here, y'all. It's so helpful. Is that timing is very interesting now. As people come out of their homes increasingly, as the pandemic begins to recede, springtime is upon us. We're moving into the summer months. And so we have an opportunity, if we can kind of surge into this idea of Go Safe McLean County, we may have an unexpected and in some ways unprecedented opportunity to begin to shift people's thinking.
I've seen letters to the editor various times over the years. One in particularly struck me from a woman who was seriously injured in a bike accident on a trail up in Normal. But what I have noticed too, and this reflects her comment, is that many young people, but people of all ages really, are they're shy about shouting out, "I'm passing on your left," coming up. And as people age, they are more hard of hearing, or they're busy on the telephone or dealing with children. And it's so important for people to shout out when they ride past. And that's a very simple thing to do. But again, we go back to education on this.
Yeah. And modeling, Mary. And
yes,
modeling.
Right.
Ray, I think I would like to hand the meeting back to you at this point, and we will bring it to a close. I would just say on behalf of HAL Group, how grateful we are for everyone's attention and interest in this process, and encourage you to stay tuned and stay active. Ray?
Thank you, Julie, and thanks to everyone who have made great contributions through your comments and questions and responses. It's not just us staff or the consultants provide answers. I saw that actually even among the attendees, we sharing information, and that's great because we don't know everything. We really have to make this a community-wide effort to help each others out so that we can achieve the vision zero or the zero fatalities and major injuries. If you have follow-up comments or questions after today's session, still not too late. You have by this Friday, 4 p.m. To email comments and thoughts, questions to Jonathan or me, and we have the email address on the screen right now, or go to our website, the plan.org, and you can also find our emails. So any thoughts that you may have or you want to add, please feel free to do so. What will happen for the next step is that the consultant will be considering all the comments that have been collected including this one, all the 3 sessions, all the 3 community conversations, and then they will formulate or prepare the final revised draft, updated draft plan, if you will, and then they will present this to the Regional Planning Commission of McLean County on April 7th at their meeting, and for consideration of adoption. And that meeting will be at 4 p.m. It's a Wednesday afternoon, and we will be a virtual meeting. So we'll put information before the meeting, how to access the virtual meeting. I will encourage you to attend if you are available. There will be a presentation by the consultant, and then there will be discussion, and the commission will be considering whether to adopt this plan or not. So, but prior to that meeting, we still have about 2 weeks. So yeah, any thoughts and comments, go to our website. And if you're interested in kind of staying engaged, and which I really encourage you all to, I don't want to see the plan sitting on the shelf. There's so many great ideas generated through all these conversations. We really want to see those ideas to be implemented. And even after the adoption, if there's adoption, we hope there will be adoption of the plan by the Planning Commission. Actually, we'll still also defer to the municipalities, whether it's the town of Normal, City of Bloomington, the county, or some other rural communities, to consider adopting ideas and recommendations that would really tailor-made for their own community. But that's not saying that we should not have an overall committee-wide, area-wide strategy and plan, in which really should also be in place. So it's really a collaborative and cooperative effort for implementation. And roads and highways, they don't just stop at the city limits or the town limits. Really, the safety is crucial, to our families and friends and neighbors, and so help each other out on that. On our website, you can, there's a place if you're interested in staying engaged for you to check the box. And if there were any future updates, news regarding this transportation safety project, then you'll get email and get more updated information. So if you will, again, it's mcplan.org, and just check out the website. Last, just kind of curious, because we have done a lot of promotion, and I really appreciate people like last Saturday morning, giving up the part of them Saturday morning, and then last evening, and then this morning. And just wondering, because we try to really encourage a lot of attendance and public engagement, but we're also trying to find out which public engagement tools or efforts are more effective, you will. So just, I don't know if anybody want to, maybe type in your chat box and you want to say, how did you learn about these community conversations? How did you know about this? So that when we do more promotion in future events or implementation, then we know, hey, we can do more, and in certain areas we can do less. Or anybody want to share? How did you learn about all these community conversations? You can type in the chat box if you like. But anyway, with that, like I said, this is just one of the final steps of the planning process. But there's a lot of work to really the beginning of a movement that hopefully will last. And then we don't have to wait until 2030 to bring the number of fatalities and major accidents to zero. We can exceed that 2030 by, can do it sooner. And but as we talked earlier, that it takes time, culture change, behavioral change. Sometimes it's not just money can solve all the problems. So it really take a network in the community-wide effort. So with that, thanks again for the time, for guys sharing your time this morning, and have a great rest of the day, and remember, go safe.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Take good care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Enjoy a safe rest of your week.
Thank you.